Why don't you think it's offensive? I think that's interesting. You said, I don't think it's offensive.
In theory, that people would rally behind Trump because he's being unfairly persecuted.
Okay, Coleman Hughes is a name that's been going around the internet spheres a lot. And admittedly, I don't really keep up with that stuff at all. So I don't really know the whole ins and outs of who he is, his beliefs, and why he's kind of going viral of sorts now. Maybe we can break it down in another video if that's something you'd like to see. Let me know in the comments if he's popular enough. Or we could even have him on if he'd want. He works for CNN, I believe, so he's probably too big time for me, but I digress. He does, however, in this segment on CNN, say some absolutely insane things about Trump, particularly about his support among black voters, that I just had to cover after I watched it, where I just think he's completely wrong. And I don't understand necessarily where he's at in terms of even trying to be defensible or defend these actions. But we'll start with this first clip and then dive in.
Yeah, I don't think they're offensive. I'm not going to punch anyone in the face, but that doesn't mean they're right either. So if you look at it, Donald Trump's been gaining steam amongst black voters since prior to 2020. The polls from 2022 before the first indictment actually showed him picking up a lot of steam too. Mm-hmm. So whatever the trend is, it's probably not the indictments. It's probably a dissatisfaction with Democrats in general. You also look at him polling against other Republicans.
But he named the
also
indictments
polling well
specifically,
with black,
though.
Right, so
he named the indictments.
He named them. So I don't think he's right about that, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think the indictment is what is drawing black voters towards him.
What do you think it is?
It's clearly something else.
What do you think it is?
Well, I think frankly, it could just be that, first of all, this trend is a lot of younger black voters. Basically, it's black men under 30 that are moving towards the Republican Party, black men basically my age. And it could just be a general dissatisfaction with the message that the Democratic Party is telling black people.
Okay, this is a two-parter that I really have to dive into to give all of the context. I want to start with this narrative that he brought up, but has really been going around largely about black voters swarming to Trump and leaving Biden while doing it. The semantics being used when discussing this can be a bit confusing. Sure, Trump has had record support among black voters. That is true. He did have double this now in polls of what he had in 2016. That is a fact, which can sound dastardly and like swarms or he's getting these massive droves until you realize it's in the average of all polls, it's 17% of the black vote that he's getting. Republicans historically just do so terrible with black voters that that's all it takes for a record. Trump himself did so poorly that 17% is double what he got in 2017. But I would hardly call 17% swarming. It's not a lot of the black vote, especially if you look at in comparison to Biden, or when you look deeper into specific polls, like in one where Trump is around 30% among black men. Biden is 20 points higher. Trump is at 11 among black women. That is pathetically low. Biden is 66 points higher. Trump is at 18 and black college students. Biden is at 71 higher. So I don't really know what he meant when he says that young black men are the ones going to Trump. It's not true, especially college educated men and even non-educated black voters or non-college educated black voters, I should say. Trump is only at 21. Where Biden is at 66. So there is massive gaps between these two people. The truth of why some black voters are going to Trump is simple. He plays the optics. He does the aesthetics very well, and ignorance plays a large part in that in two different ways. In that Biden also hasn't necessarily made it hard to paint him as a racist when looking historically, which is kind of where ignorance comes in some regard, as a lot of it is clips where the context, when you're given that, it isn't nearly what it seems when you're just seeing the clips. Some make more sense when you're given the context of the time period or other things, like with the crime bill. To be clear, still a terrible bill. Still led to plenty of black people getting disproportionately arrested at rates that they shouldn't have. Still should have never been passed. But when you learn that the bill was more bipartisan and even supported in the community, it's hard to peg one, Biden as like the main villain, or two, to peg racism as the motive. It was very much a huge swing and miss. And it was fueled more by the racial tensions at the time rather than direct racial bias or anything like that from one person. Again, bipartisanly supported, but it still happened. And admittedly, it is something that people of color are allowed to have disdain about. And there's also, to be completely clear, some inexcusable moments with Biden as well, but there has to be a point of discernment in comparing Biden to the alternative, not to the almighty. And where Biden now has the first black woman VP, the most diverse cabinet of all time, record investments into HBCUs, that being black colleges, passed the first executive action to tackle racial bias at a federal level and ensure that things like the crime bill can't ever get passed in the future. Meanwhile, looking into Trump's history in the same regard mirrors a history of rather unexplainable and direct racism, racial housing discrimination that he was proven to have done and lost the lawsuit about, calling for the death of the Central Park Five and then refusing to walk it back even after they were proved to be innocent, to now still targeting people with brown skin, immigrants instead, but largely tossing the black community to the side, allowing attacks on affirmative action, DEI, and more, jumping into those in a lot, saying systemic racism isn't real, all the while labeling his 91 charges as the true reason that black voters would prefer him over another black president. Just another one of his quotes.
Why don't you think it's offensive? I think that's interesting. You said, I don't think it's offensive.
You said it was wrong. So
I think it's like incorrect. I don't.
He did say it was wrong.
But it doesn't offend me as an idea.
Yeah.
The idea in theory that people would rally behind Trump because he's being unfairly persecuted, and that resonates with black people's feeling of being unfairly persecuted, that's not offensive to me in theory.
So this was actually the clip that made me want to cover this, because he's obviously smart. We cover the mental gymnastics that MAGA goes through trying to justify Trump's actions, and it's never nearly as articulate as this, because I can understand what he's getting at. Truly, he makes a good point if it was right, but I can also tell you why it's wrong. He's both giving Trump too much credit with his implied meaning of sorts. I think that Trump thinks in a very binary way and says exactly what he means. That's kind of what he has problems so often. But what he's articulating here also isn't a belief that Trump holds. That's the biggest problem. Trump is on record numerous times saying he doesn't believe systemic racism is real. He doesn't believe that black people are unfairly persecuted. And he also backs that up by telling police agencies while president that they should end white privilege and CRT trainings. So Coleman Hughes is right in that Trump definitely thinks that he's being unfairly persecuted. But I don't understand the need to caricature beliefs that Trump doesn't hold, very obviously, just to try and jump through hoops to defend something clearly wrong that he did or said that you very much should have taken offense to, or I guess not to ascribe personal feelings, that anyone should be able to understand why any person of color may take offense to it and see it as rightfully so. If you enjoyed this video, we're Social Society. We're a commentary channel influenced by politics, society, and the economy. We are pretty left-leaning on this channel, but we're open to our right-wingers as well. The biggest thing here is having conversations that get everyone to the bottom of the truth. If that sounds like something that could interest you, consider smashing that subscribe button, leaving us a like, or even commenting on this video. We even have memberships available as low as $3 if you'd like to support, because the only way we become a society is together.